We're going to learn how to determine the interval quality. According to this chart, you see all of the typical intervals that occur in a diatonic context, that is, within a key signature and without adding sharps and flats. And as you can see, then above, it shows the number of half steps that occur for each one of these kinds of intervals. These intervals occur in pairs. We have minor and major seconds, minor and major thirds, sixths, and sevenths. These are called the imperfect intervals. The other intervals are called perfect. You have perfect unisons, fourths, fifths, and octaves. As you can see here, the perfect fourth and the perfect fifth, in between is the tritone. And really what the tritone is, it will either be an augmented fourth or a diminished fifth, as we'll see later. Here is displayed all of the naturally occurring diatonic seconds, and as you can see, all of those seconds are either major or minor. If we were to take one of those seconds, such as F to G, and we find them on the piano, we start at the F and we need to count the number of half steps that we move. So you don't want to count on the F, but you want to count 1 when you move your first half step, and you count again 2 when you move to G. And as a result, we know, because we have some kind of second that has 2 half steps, that we have a major second. If we would take another example, such as B to C, we locate B and C on the piano. We only need to move 1 half step, and according to our chart, we have a minor second. The other intervals work the same way. So if we look at the thirds, we notice all of the naturally occurring thirds are either minor or major. If we take one of those examples, locate the notes on the piano, and move and count the half steps, in this case 1, 2, and 3, we can see that we have a third, and because there are 3 half steps, we have a minor third. And let's do this with a sixth. Let's take it from A to F. So again, we count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. There are 8 half steps between A and F, and therefore our sixth is a minor sixth. The quality is minor. Now let's make this slightly more complicated and add a sharp. We have not yet worked with accidentals, but it's really no more complicated. In this case, if we add a sharp to that F, it's no longer a minor sixth. We do know it's a kind of sixth because it goes from A to F, or some kind of F, in this case F sharp, but we don't know the quality anymore. But on our piano, let's move that F to an F sharp. We had counted 8 half steps, now let's count 1 more to 9 half steps, and according to our chart, we now have a major sixth. According to our chart here, we can see that when we had the minor sixth, we only needed to raise it by a half step to get a major sixth. Likewise, if we had a major third, we just lower it by a half step to get a minor third. The same relationship is true with seconds or with sevenths. But this chart here shows us how we can determine if an interval is augmented or diminished. Now let's go back to our previous example. We initially had an A moving to an F, but we had added a sharp to that F. So moving from A to F sharp gives us a major sixth, and that's what is displayed now. Let's take away that sharp and give it a double sharp instead. We need to raise that F sharp to an F double sharp, and we had counted 9 half steps, now we need to count 10. The difficulty now is in our chart, 10 half steps is typically a minor seventh. But in this case we have some kind of sixth, not some kind of seventh. If you're confused about why we have some kind of sixth, you should review how to determine the interval distance, the number component of the interval. But if you're clear on how to determine the interval distance, it should be clear to you that we have to have some kind of sixth. So how do we reconcile this? Well, let's look at that chart that we had just seen. This shows how if we have a minor and a major sixth, if we use accidentals to either make the interval wider or smaller, it shows us how we are supposed to label that. In this case, we're adding a sharp to the top note. We're raising the top note, so it's making the interval wider, and as a result, we need to move up to an augmented sixth. And as such, moving from A to F double sharp gives us an augmented sixth. Augmented and diminished intervals don't occur very often in a diatonic context, but they do happen with fourths and with fifths. Displayed here are all of the naturally occurring fourths and fifths, and you will notice that all of them are perfect. But among the fourths, all are perfect except one, and that's the augmented fourth. Looking in our chart, we see that perfect fourths have 5 half steps, but that particular fourth actually has 6 half steps, and as such, that perfect fourth needs to be raised to an augmented fourth, and that's how it's labeled. In the same way, we see these fifths, but one of the fifths is diminished. That's because all of the fifths displayed have 7 half steps, but the one that's highlighted only has 6 half steps. So again, in the chart in the lower right, we had a perfect fifth, but because it's a little bit smaller by 1 half step, we need to label it as a diminished fifth.